Welcome to this explainer. Okay, so let's dive right into this. When you picture Antarctica, what do you see? If you were to fly over it right now, all you'd see is just endless, empty white. You don't hear any birds, you don't see any plants. It looks entirely lifeless, just a massive, flat, frozen wasteland sitting at the bottom of the world. But as we're going to explore today, that empty white surface is actually a giant illusion. There is something truly mind-bending hiding deep down below that ice. We're going to look at exactly what is founded under Antarctica.
So what's actually hiding down there? Well, the mystery of this hidden world first cracked wide open back in 1970 when a group of Soviet scientists decided to just start drilling into this endless white. For 28 years, they just kept going and going. But then, after drilling down nearly 4,000 meters, they suddenly had to stop. They hit something completely unimaginable. It wasn't solid rock, it was liquid water. They had literally found a secret, massive lake hiding below thousands of meters of ice, a lake that had been completely sealed off from the rest of the planet for 15 million years. I mean, how is that even possible? And more importantly, could there be life swimming around in the dark down there that's been evolving completely separate from the rest of our world?
Which brings us to Stage 1, Earth's Hidden Continent. To take our own journey down, we first need to really grasp the sheer, just unimaginable scale of the ice sheet we have to drill through. If we were to take a chunk of this ice and place it on the surface, at its thickest point, it would be almost the height of Mount Kilimanjaro. Think about that for a second. You would literally have to stack the tallest building in the world 6 times just to reach the top of this ice. It's an incredibly imposing physical barrier.
Now, because of that massive barrier, scientists had to get pretty creative to map what was underneath without, drilling holes everywhere. In the 1950s, scientists would literally explode TNT on the surface just to measure the seismic waves bouncing back through the ice. Today, they're using even cooler tech. They shoot space lasers from satellites that bounce off the surface to find hints of what's below. And they fly these planes equipped with ice-penetrating radar, crisscrossing the continent to bounce signals straight through the ice and map out the bedrock. And what those radar planes revealed is absolutely staggering. Just look at this contrast. Above the ice, you've got this flat, seemingly featureless desert. But underneath, the radar showed an entirely hidden ancient world. It is not flat at all. There's a subglacial trench that's deeper than the Grand Canyon. There's a completely hidden mountain range that rivals the European Alps in size. They even found evidence of a massive impact crater. And get this, the largest volcanic region on Earth, all completely buried out of sight. Now let's move into Stage 2, reading the deep ice. As we actually start physically drilling downwards from the surface, we aren't just descending in depth, we are literally journeying backward in time. Step 1 is passing through the snow. But the snow is surprisingly sparse because Antarctica is technically a desert. Actually, it's the driest, coldest, windiest desert on Earth. The snow just a few feet down could already be a decade old. As we move to Step 2, the texture totally changes. The accumulating snow gets compressed into something called firn. It basically looks and acts like a scary frozen sponge. And I say scary because as this giant ice sheet slowly flows across the rocky ground below, it stretches. If it stretches too fast, this spongy firn snaps, creating these massive dark crevasses that you absolutely do not want to fall into. Finally, in Step 3, the immense pressure compresses that spongy firn into solid, deep ice. So the absolutely crucial point here is what happens during that compression. As that spongy firn gets squished into solid ice, the pores close up and the air inside gets locked in. It creates these little trapped bubbles of the atmosphere from exactly that time in history. As our drill goes deeper, we pass ice from 500 years ago during the Renaissance, then 2,000 years ago during the Roman Empire, down to ancient Egypt, all the way down to 40,000 years ago when Neanderthals walked the earth. Pulling up an ice core is like pulling up a literal atmospheric time machine. And scientists can read these cores brilliantly. Ice that forms in the winter has a different texture than summer ice, creating alternating shades that you can literally count, almost like tree rings. You can even spot sudden, dramatic events, like a thick, dark line of ash from a volcanic eruption over 20,000 years ago. This incredible historical record is actually why scientists have a very strict rule when hiking in Antarctica. You are strictly forbidden from peeing on the ice. Because if you do, hundreds of years from now, some descendant of yours is going to pull up a pristine ice core, study the ancient layers, and suddenly wonder, hey, what's this yellow line?
Jokes aside, though, the scientific value here is just immense. Right now, the scientific community is buzzing because a European team recently extracted an ice core that holds 1.3 million years of climate history. Over a million years of our planet's story, perfectly preserved right there in the ice, just waiting to be analyzed in the lab. Which leads us directly to stage 3, the secret subglacial lakes. Okay, we are now at 3,500 meters deep. That's over 2 miles down. And down here, the ice completely changes because it isn't forming from snow anymore, but from liquid water freezing from below. But wait, how can there be liquid water under 2 miles of freezing ice? It all comes down to some incredible physics. First off, that massive ice sheet acts as a giant thermal blanket, trapping the natural geothermal heat radiating up from Earth's core. But more importantly, the sheer weight of all that ice creates roughly 350 times the atmospheric pressure you'd feel at sea level. And under that extreme pressure, water actually stays liquid at much, much lower temperatures. The result? A massive subglacial lake, which scientists named Lake Vostok.
But Lake Vostok, which is about the size of Lake Ontario, by the way, isn't alone down there. As scientists kept looking, they found hundreds of lakes, and there's a major divide between them. Some, like Vostok, have been perfectly isolated and sealed off for 15 million years. But then, a scientist named Dr. Helen Fricker made this jaw-dropping discovery using satellite data. She noticed the massive ice sheet was literally lifting and dropping by almost 10 meters in certain places. She discovered that alongside the isolated lakes, there are active lakes connected by an entire hidden plumbing system of under-ice rivers, constantly filling and draining into one another.
All right, on to stage 4, poking the ancient lakes. So the international science community realized they absolutely needed to know what was in that water. But how on earth do you drill into a pristine, pressurized ecosystem without completely ruining it? Dr. John Priscu, one of the first scientists to study Lake Vostok, perfectly summed up the terrifying danger here. He said, if you take a Pepsi bottle and you put in a Mentos, it just blows up. So that's what we're looking at. If they pierce the lake incorrectly, the immense pressure could cause a massive blowout, shooting water out like a volcano and totally destroying the very ecosystem they were trying to study. So a massive international race began, with 3 different countries targeting 3 different lakes. The Russians had a huge head start at Lake Vostok, but their drill hole was filled with toxic kerosene to keep it from freezing. They tried to use heavier Freon as a plug, but when they broke through, the pressurized lake water shot 30 meters straight up the hole, mixing completely with the kerosene. They claimed they found new bacteria, but it was highly controversial, because the samples were totally contaminated with the drilling fluid. Meanwhile, the British and US teams used a brilliant alternative: super clean, boiling hot water decontaminated with UV light to melt through the ice. The British team tragically ran out of fuel right before the very end, but the US team, they achieved a completely clean, successful breakthrough.
And that brings us to the final stop, stage 5, alien life on Earth.
So the US team safely breaks through the ice without any contamination, lowers their instruments down, and basically holds their breath. And what they found? Unbelievable. Tons of life. They discovered a thriving, full subglacial ecosystem. There were vibrant colonies of bacteria and tiny organisms, along with completely new types of bacteriophage viruses, which, don't worry, only infect bacteria, not humans. All of this life was thriving in the pitch black, completely without sunlight. Because Antarctica wasn't always covered in ice, scientists believe this is old, new life, ancient organisms that adapted to survive in extreme darkness and pressure over millions of years. It confirmed for sure that a completely separate, hidden biological ecosystem exists beneath the continent. So, what you should really take away from this explainer is how all of this fundamentally changes our view of the universe. The technology we use to cleanly drill through 2 miles of ice without contaminating the alien world below, that's exactly the blueprint we need for space exploration. Which leaves us with this incredible question. If we can find complex, thriving life in the coldest, darkest, highest pressure, most alien environment right here on Earth, what in the world are we going to find when we finally drill through the ice of moons like Jupiter's Europa? We have only just scratched the surface of what's hidden in the dark. Keep wondering, keep exploring, and we'll see you in the next explainer.